In this movie, we're going to talk about AutoSave and AutoRecover. We'll first look at the option settings for AutoSave and AutoRecover. And then for AutoSave, we're going to look at recovering a saved version, and then we're going to recover a draft version. And then we'll talk about AutoRecover. So I'm going to work in the spreadsheet that I use to open up the movie with, where we have AutoSave. Sorry about that. And to talk about AutoSave. The settings for AutoSave and AutoRecover are in the Backstage area, and you can get there by pressing Alt-F-T-S for save. At the top of the dialog box, there's a section that says Save Workbooks. This is the AutoSave settings. We can choose which format we want AutoSave to save our spreadsheets in. The Excel workbook format is the default. That's the 2010 Open XML format. Unless you have a good reason to change that, I would leave that at the default. The next option, Save AutoRecover information every, in this case, 10 minutes. 10 minutes is the default, and the checkbox is checked by default as well. This establishes an interval for which Excel will maintain and save a copy of your open workbook so that, and we'll show you this in a minute, you can go back and divert back to an earlier saved version. You can deselect this and turn it off. I know it used to be when Excel kicked in the autosave that you would notice it as you were working. Your worksheet would pause and it sort of disrupted your work. I haven't noticed that happening anymore with the computers being more advanced than they used to be. But you can turn this off, and you can also adjust the interval. I will say that if you adjust it down to 1 minute, Excel won't save your workbook every minute. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know how many changes you can make in a minute anyway. But it seems to wait at least 3 minutes, even if you set it at a time period less than that. The next option, keep the last auto-saved version if I close without saving. That, again, is turned on by default. This can be helpful in a number of ways. If somehow you close Excel and you don't save the changes you made in your workbook, Excel will save a draft copy that you can get a hold of the next time you open up Excel. It maintains these draft copies for 4 days and then it deletes them. And right below the keep the last autosave version if I close without saving option is the place that you can determine that Excel will save those versions to. Auto recover the file location. You can change that to be some other place than the default. And below that is the default file location for when you save a workbook for the first time. You can also change that location as well. That is not an autosave or auto recover function, however. Below that is the auto recover options. This option is deselected by default. Disable auto recover for this workbook only. I'm not sure why anybody would want to turn this off and disable this feature. Because with this option turned on, when Excel crashes, Excel will maintain the last version of your spreadsheet or spreadsheets, however many you may have open, and display them for you the next time you open up Excel in a task pane on the left side for you to then recover your workbooks. So what do the saved versions of this spreadsheet look like? Where are they? They're in the Backstage area. You can go there by pressing Alt-F, File, and they are listed. You may notice that I have versions that have been saved with an interval of time that's less than 10 minutes, and we just left the option that was set at 10 minutes. That's because before I had the option set at a shorter interval of time. This can be helpful if you're working away in Excel and you've made some major changes in your workbook and saved those changes and then later realized that you made an error of some type. You can go back here and pull up a prior version, hopefully that you'll have, that has your spreadsheet, a version of your spreadsheet that's before you made those changes. You can open up one of these versions. I get a security warning, macros have been disabled. I actually don't have any macros in this spreadsheet. And this is actually another window. This is a separate spreadsheet at this point, and I can show you that by going to the View tab, clicking Switch Windows. We have Book 1, which is where we just came from, and the first one listed, Book 1, it's got a date and a timestamp, autosave version, is the version we're currently looking at. So I can divert back to this version and overwrite the last saved version with this selected version. Left-clicking OK. So I'm back in my workbook again, and we're going to talk about the other aspect of AutoSave. As you're making changes in your workbook, and I'm going to make a change right here, change, and you close Excel without saving the changes that you've made, Excel will maintain a copy of the last version of the workbook that it created. So as Excel stacks up a bank of versions of your spreadsheet, that last version will be maintained if you don't save the changes in your workbook. The catch is that Excel needs to establish a version that represents some changes that you have not yet saved. I'm going to check to see if Excel has saved a version of this spreadsheet. Going back to the File tab, I see that it has. So I'm going to close Excel without saving any changes. And I get the dialog box, do you want to save the changes you made? I'm going to not save those changes. I've opened Excel back up and I've opened up the workbook. And I've got a bit of an issue because my understanding of how this is supposed to work is not exactly the way it's currently working for me. So you're going to do one of two things. I'll show you what's supposed to happen, and then I'm going to show you what did happen. And perhaps somebody can communicate with me and straighten me out on what's going on here with this AutoSave feature. What's supposed to happen is when you go to the Backstage area, Recent, you click Recover Unsaved Workbooks, and I'm supposed to have that unsaved draft version listed here. I'm going to cancel out of that. Instead, I have it listed here. Today, 6:40 a.m., in parentheses, when I closed without saving. So when I left-click this version of the spreadsheet, I see that the word change that I typed into cell C7 is there, and I get a message that says recovered unsaved file. This is a recovered file that is temporarily stored on your computer. I can left-click Restore, and I get the message you're about to overwrite the last saved version with the selected version. I'm going to say OK. I'm OK with that. And now I've diverted back to that version of the spreadsheet that I never saved in the first place. The last bit of functionality, Autorecover, can be a lifesaver if, and maybe I should say when, Excel crashes. And if I could induce a crash, I would show you this functionality, but I don't know how to do that. But when Excel crashes, it will maintain a version of all of the workbooks that you have open. And when you open up Excel again, you'll get a task pane on the left side of the screen that lists all of those spreadsheets that you can then sequentially open up and recover the work that you did on those spreadsheets that you were working on when Excel crashed. So we looked at the AutoSave and AutoRecover options in the Backstage area. We recovered a saved version of our workbook that Excel establishes every X number of minutes. It's an interval of time that we can control. We recovered a draft version of our workbook, although not in the textbook way that I would have expected us to be able to. And we talked about AutoRecover and how that can save you in the event that Excel crashes.